Our next speaker is someone who will be able to also complement the presentation by Professor Pape. Ghada Karmi is well known to all of us. She's a Jerusalemite. She's a Maqdisiyya. She was born in Jerusalem and was forced to leave her home with her family as a result of Israel's creation in 1948. She practiced as a doctor for many years, as a specialist in the health of migrants and refugees. She held a number of research appointments on Middle Eastern politics and culture, including at SAWAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies, Durham, and Leeds Universities. She was an associate fellow of the Royal Institute of International Affairs from 1999 to 2001, leading on a project on Israel-Palestinian reconciliation. In 2009, she became a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. Currently, she is a research fellow at the Institute of Arab and Islamic Studies at Exeter University. Ghada, you have 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure whether people can see me because I'm so short and, and there are cameras and things in the way. Do you want me to stand? Is that better? Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Just one correction. I am no longer at the University of Exeter. I was with Ilan for a while, but I am no longer there. Well, first of all, what I want to do is to congratulate you, Ilan, on this extremely impressive and important book about a very, very important subject. I really found it very informative. I had always imagined that I was somebody who was fairly knowledgeable about some of the issues in the book, but really I'm not. I learned quite a lot, and I know anybody who reads it will feel the same as I do, especially, by the way, your sections on the origins of Christian Zionism, both in Britain and in the United States. Very important. But I must tell you that while I was reading it, I found myself thinking about the Palestinian people, these poor people who, you know, overall, Palestine's population was agrarian. It was not composed of sophisticated professionals and academics and smart journalists. It was simple people who could not possibly have understood the extraordinary complexity of the beliefs, the ideology, the ideas that you've talked about. My grandfather came to my mind. My grandfather was sort of owned a lot of farming land, but himself farmed it as well with peasants. Now, when I remember, and I think about him, I never met him, unfortunately, but when I think about him, perhaps at the end of a day, sitting there with a cup of coffee and a chat, good God, how could such a man have ever remotely imagined the plans that were being laid miles away in Europe for people like him? It's really very sad, that side of the story, apart from anything else. Now, the question of the role of Christianity, which you bring out very well, really is extremely important. We must not forget, because in those early Christian Zionists, but also the Christian world in general, there are certain ideas that are implanted from very early on in life, except if you belong to that small minority of communists and socialists and so on, Marxists. The generality of people were familiar with the concepts of the Old Testament, the Bible, Jesus, the Holy Land, all this stuff. You know, you don't stand a chance when faced with this. This goes so deep that when you then stir it a little bit with the return of the Jews, you know, back to the homeland, etc., it's not a very difficult concept for them to absorb. And what impressed me so much was the depth of this, how deep it goes, how difficult to entrench these ideas, to unplug this kind of childhood, religious, even if you didn't practice the religion, but that familiarity with these concepts, how very difficult the task is. It's huge, it's monumental. Various other things I want to point out. I'm very interested in the way that you point out repeatedly in the book that the Palestinians were never considered. And you're quite right, of course, they were never considered. All these plans were being done over their heads. They had no idea that any of this was happening. But there was another group of people who were also not considered, from what I can see, and that is the Arab Jews. The Jewish communities in the Arab world didn't feature at all it seems to me, in Zionist thinking and in this planning and in the way that Western politicians were influenced. You know, what you do realize is the sort of Jews they were talking about were East European and Central European Jews. And this is very interesting. It's very interesting to me personally because, of course, that group who lived beyond the Pale and Poland, Russia, Lithuania, etc., were the closest thing you would have had to a subgroup or a community which could lead you into fantasizing that you were a separate race. That's where that comes from. And that, it seemed to me, by inference, was what you were really saying. So this was, it seems, was never raised. This group of Jews were never consulted or considered at all. Now, other points, because I know I haven't got much time, that I want to raise, and that comes across very, very strongly, not for the first time in my life, I must say, but comes across, reminds me again, refreshes that thought in your book. You know, the tenacity with which the Zionists fought for setting up the Jewish state in Palestine. I don't know about you, but I do not have a parallel example of people so utterly devoted to an aim that they think about it day and night, they work for it at every conceivable moment. They never miss an opportunity to make it happen, or if they can use it to recruit, to absolutely sleepless devotion to this idea. What is that? What is that about? Because without it, you see, I don't think they would have ever got away with this ridiculous idea. With it, however, it was unceasing, indefatigable, persistent, continuous, day and night, day in, day out. Amazing, amazing. That's really what came across at me. And just, you know, a couple of questions. Is there any other lobby to which we can compare this? Because it would be really interesting to see if, was there any other cause, is there any other cause which has created the situation of a, I was going to use words which I'll be accused of being anti-Semitic, but I mean, with so widespread that you have a movement, the lobby, the activities of the lobby at every level in so many different societies. The reach of this lobby is extraordinary. Is there a parallel case? And of course, finally, something which you could not really have written much about because of the timing of the book, October 7th. Yeah. What effect is this going to have on all the stuff we've been talking about? Because the events of October the 7th have been phenomenal in turning things upside down, in making us understand things in a completely different way, in presenting the world to us in a different way. This is the most extraordinary event in my lifetime, I assure you, and I would think also in yours. Where it's going to lead, I don't know, because it's still unfolding. But the way it's been going so far, it's presented us with fundamental questions about the general order of things that we take for granted, that we have understood the world in a certain way. All of that has been upended. What effect will that have on precisely the kind of setup you've been describing? I wonder about that, and I think that has to be a source of hope, of optimism, because of with change, always, when things are going to happen, you have to have change. Things cannot go on as they are, they will change. There is every indication that the change that October 7th has been bringing about and will bring about is for a much better future, not only for the Palestinian people, but for the whole of humanity.